Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live, Antifa protesters getting protected by cops. A lot of stuff happened this weekend, but we have a very serious bit of news. A regional emergency was declared. A state of emergency declared in 17 states over a cyber attack that has shut down the largest oil pipeline in this country. At a time when gas prices are already up around 22%, fears of inflation are looming, and many worry that this could lead to a market collapse. This is the worst possible timing. I don't think we've gotten any update on how this happened from the White House, but it's very serious. So let's just jump right in so you can get some understanding of what's going on with this emergency. It is expected to cause a spike in gas prices, especially for those who are on the East Coast. This goes from Texas all the way up to New Jersey, and it's going to have an impact on even states north of Jersey and surrounding Jersey. So let me just give you the straight news. We'll see what's happening. The Hill reports regional emergency declaration issued over pipeline shutdown after cyber attack. They say the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration on Sunday issued a regional emergency declaration in 17 states and the District of Columbia in response to the shutdown of one of the largest pipelines in the U.S., which supplies around 45% of fuel consumed by the East Coast. The regional emergency declaration from the United States Department of Transportation lifts restrictions for motor carriers and drivers who are providing assistance to areas that are suffering a shortage of gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products in the wake of the Colonial Pipeline shutdown. So for those that are wondering what states, this is Alabama, Arkansas, D.C., Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. The declaration grants drivers and carriers relief from Parts 390 through 399 of Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations. These regulations are reinstated once a driver or commercial motor vehicles is used for interstate commerce that does not provide assistance to help the shortage. Upon termination of direct assistance to emergency relief efforts related to the shortages of gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products due to the shutdown, partial shutdown, and or manual operation of the Colonial Pipeline system in the affected states, the motor carrier and driver are subject to the requirements of 49 CFR Parts 390 through 399. Carriers or drivers who are subject to an out of service are not eligible for the relief. Okay, the emergency declaration will stay in effect until the emergency is over, or until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, June 8th, 2021. So the bigger question I'm sure most of you have is what happened? Ransomware cyber attack on one of the biggest pipelines in the country, shutting it down. We don't know when this is going to end, but let's see what the Wall Street Journal reports. Then we're going to talk about the news you guys don't want to hear, but gas prices are already up, and there's fears about what might happen with the U.S. dollar. Ethereum has hit $4,200 just about. I mean, this is nuts. Following SNL, Dogecoin went down briefly, and then people started buying up the dip. It's not as high as it was from the rumors. I don't think Dogecoin is going down, and I'm not trying to claim that Dogecoin is the future, jokingly. But the reason I bring this up is the results of this pipeline attack are likely, in my opinion, to exacerbate the problems of the economy we're already seeing. The mass printing of money the bill comes due. You keep printing money. It has to be paid for somewhere. The Wall Street Journal reports Colonial Pipeline carries roughly 45% of gasoline and diesel fuel consumed on the East Coast. They say the main pipeline carrying gasoline and diesel fuel to the U.S. East Coast was shut down by its operator after being hit with a cyber attack. The Colonial Pipeline Company operates the 5,500-mile Colonial Pipeline system, taking fuel from the refineries of the Gulf Coast to the New York metro area. It said it learned Friday that it was the victim of the attack and took certain systems offline to contain the threat, which has temporarily halted all pipeline operations. Take a look at how massive this is. This goes from Houston through Baton Rouge, through Birmingham to Atlanta. I believe it splits off. You get Nashville. So Nashville's being impacted. Charlotte, Greensboro, Norfolk, Linden, and everything in between, mind you. This is huge. The outage isn't expected to have a significant impact on fuel markets unless the pipeline remains shut down for several days, analysts said. And so far, it has been. This has been going on since Friday. In an update Saturday afternoon, the company said it has found that the cyber attack on Colonial involved ransomware, a type of code that attempts to seize computer systems and demand payment from the victim to have the item unlocked. Two people briefed on the probe said that the attack appeared to be limited to information systems that hadn't infiltrated operational control systems, but cautioned the investigation was in its early stages. It is very, very easy to spread ransomware. Let me tell you guys, you want to know how scary this is? A very common attack vector is just putting a virus on like a USB stick and chucking it on the ground. And that's it, because people are dumb. If you ever find a memory card, a disk, a CD, I don't care what it is, do not put it in your computer, destroy it and throw it away. If anyone ever sends you one, destroy it. Do not use it. I have seen people, there'll be buckets of USBs and like companies will be like, we're giving out free memory drives. I'm like, you're nuts. If it ain't in the package, I would not use it. And even then, who knows? You got to be very, very careful. They're going to say, the company has said it engaged a third-party cybersecurity firm to help with the issue, which affected some of its IT systems, and had contacted federal agencies and law enforcement. FireEye Inc., a U.S.-based cybersecurity firm, is investigating the attack, according to people familiar with the matter. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which worked with critical infrastructure companies and cyber defense, didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Can I just point out how much of our resources at the FBI are being used because some morons tried breaking into the Capitol building? I get it. Not a good thing. You can say it 50 million times. But they're going after hundreds of people at this point. I wonder if we are too stupid a country to deal with our actual critical infrastructure. Apparently that seems to be the case. I remember maybe like 7 years ago, I went to DEF CON and Black Hat Hacker conventions, and I got there were demonstrations on how to do these kinds of things. They're hackers at these conventions warning industrial control systems, refineries, pipelines can be easily hacked. So what have we been doing? Well, I know that we're spending a lot of our resources tracking down the loonies that tried breaking into the Capitol building, and even the bumbling dotards who walked in confused. I know the FBI raided the wrong woman's home, according to Anchorage Daily News. At least based on photos, it appears to be the wrong woman's home. But I'm glad they're doing something, right? Meanwhile, our critical infrastructure is being attacked. These are maybe this is the way it's always been, you know? Maybe politics always came first. I don't understand how the U.S. has maintained its superpower status, if that would be the case. They say it wasn't clear whether the attack was perpetrated by a nation-state actor or criminal actor. Attributing cyber attacks is difficult and can often take months or longer. I do believe now they're saying they think it is a criminal group, not a state. Wall Street Journal goes on to say the Colonial Pipeline is the largest refined products pipeline in the U.S., transporting more than 100 million gallons a day, or roughly 45% of fuel consumed on the East Coast. Quote, at this time, our primary focus is the safe and efficient restoration of our service and our efforts to return to normal operation, the company said in a statement. This process is already underway, and we are working diligently to address this matter and to minimize disruption to our customers. Colonial spokeswoman Kelsey Tweed said the company didn't have further details to provide at this time. Inventories of gasoline have been readied for the summer driving season and usually get replenished every 5 to 6 days. But if the pipeline remains offline for days, shortages at terminals that receive fuel in the southeastern U.S. and Atlantic coast markets could begin to affect retail stations and consumers, said Andy Lapau, president of consulting firm Lapau Oil Associates in Houston. It's similar to a hurricane event where the pipeline gets shut down. So if it's a day or two, then the impact will be mitigated. The fuels artery is critical to supplying the northeastern U.S. and other markets, and extended shutdowns of the pipeline have caused fuel prices to jump. Fuel prices rose in 2016 following a Colonial Pipeline leak in Alabama that closed the conduit, as they did in 2008 when Hurricane Ike smashed into the Gulf Coast. It is also among the many aging U.S. pipelines that were built before 1970, having started full operations in 1964. I'd like to just give a shout out to our good friends over at the Green New Deal, the people like Greta Thunberg who are saying that we need to effectively ban all fossil fuels by next year. She said, we will not wait till 2030 or even 2022. It must be done now. Do you see what's happening when one of our pipelines goes down? I'm not a big fan of relying on ancient technology. I'm not a big fan of using oil or, petroleum, whatever. But there's a problem. You see, we are addicted in the sense that we built a civilization with billions of people off of petroleum. And now we are at the point where if we just stop people will suffer and die. It's a very, very difficult philosophical and ethical conundrum. So I can only point out, whatever your opinion is on climate change or whatever, just know that the solutions proposed by the left, the immediate ones, and not every leftist, just people like Greta Thunberg, would result in the death of millions and mass suffering. I don't know what you do. I personally think we should be getting away from these technologies because they're vulnerable. Nuclear energy seems to be fantastic, and hopefully fusion at some point. But we're always, 20 years away from fusion. For now, it may be that we're stuck reliant on these fossil fuels. We may want to start focusing on alternate sources of energy, notably nuclear probably seems to be the best. The challenge right now is weaning ourselves off of it, but still relying on it because it is an emergency source. Look, I got an electric car, all right? I got a Tesla. I do for this reason, because I'm worried about what's happening with economic instability, rising gas prices. So I was like, I'm gonna make that investment and get that electric car. Now, the electricity is still made by mostly fossil fuels. Some of it does come, a decent amount, comes from renewables or other sources. But in the event the power goes out, I've been advised, get a diesel generator. And I find that very, very funny. I'm like, so I need to get a diesel generator, fossil fuels in a big tank from my house so that when my car can't charge, I turn the gas on to charge my car. You see how that works? Now, I'm not saying it's bad to have an electric car. It's still good. But a lot of the energy is still being produced by fossil fuels. And the point I'm trying to make is that even if we do switch to renewables, we have to have high energy alternatives, probably diesel fuel, probably petroleum based fuels. So when we can see like wind turbine damage or no wind, if nuclear is forced to be shut down, we need backups. But you know what? Maybe that's the best of both worlds. We have fossil fuel on standby. We use it to a certain degree to maintain the infrastructure. And then we crank up the knob when power goes out in other areas. I don't know. What I do know is that gas prices are already set to increase. Gas prices set to rise after pipeline cyber attack when they already were up. Check this out. This is from just today. Average price of gas jumps again. Here's where we compare to last year. The average U.S. price of regular grade gasoline jumped 6 cents to $3.02 per gallon. They say, I believe, yes, the price of the pump is $1.05 higher than it was a year ago. Now, I remember back in the 2000s or whatever, wasn't it like $4 or $5 a gallon some places? In Chicago, I remember seeing $2 a gallon in the early 2000s and then later on seeing it jump. So it's going up. The price of gas is going to be a smack in the face to everybody. When gas goes up, everything else has to go up. Transporting these goods, shipping costs have to go up. People driving to work, got to pay them more money. The basic bits of energy that people are that are required to do the jobs has to go up. Now, I think what's really fascinating about gas prices and food and everything is that people talk about how automation is going to save the world. It's going to make it so that people don't have to work. You realize automation still requires energy. It doesn't necessarily reduce the energy costs. It may in many capacities, but people still need to consume things. People still need to maintain these systems, and the same amount of energy is probably going to be consumed. We can make things more and more efficient for sure, but humans will continue to consume energy and expend it. So even if you're having, I suppose people could eat a lot less if they're doing a lot less work. We could make more efficient machines. But the reality is, any one of these climate change people, the climate crisis, activists like Greta Thunberg, no matter what, their solution has to be less human beings. That's really it. And I wonder what that means moving forward, other than either they can never do anything or they'll advocate. They've literally advocated not having kids because of the environment. That's one thing. They've been saying you can't have kids because of climate change. We'll see. But how's this going to affect you? It's going to make everything cost more money at a time when they're already paying $16 an hour in unemployment. Incentives to dramatically reduce consumption, whether intentional or not. The Hill reports gas prices are expected to rise following a ransomware attack targeting Colonial Pipeline last week. Reuters and the Associated Press noted that gas prices were already up nationwide by an average of 6 cents per gallon over the past 2 weeks. If the interruption persists, we will see more regional impacts than nationwide in terms of supply and prices. The South, Southeast, Maryland, and Mississippi to Georgia will likely see gas prices increase first. Now, most of you probably know I am in Maryland, but not on the coast. I'm actually just between West Virginia and Maryland. West Virginia is not included in the emergency. The shorter the pipeline shutdown, the better news for motorists. Other experts told the news service the pipeline shutdown could affect airports in the southeast should it last for more than a few days. Colonial Pipeline Company said in a statement last week that it has been taking steps. So we get it at this point. This shutdown, the extended lockdowns, now the oil pipeline being shut down, unemployment at $16 an hour. All of this is going to cause inflation, and it's going to reduce consumption, which in turn will probably still result in more inflation. As you probably know, because I've talked about it last week, we're dealing with a crisis in this country that Joe Biden wants to give people more money to be on unemployment. The plan is to give people a $300 bonus to extend what already exists. And this means that on average, people will be getting $16 an hour to not work. We're seeing viral photos and videos of fast food restaurants saying, sorry, nobody wants to work here. You know what? It's problematic in some sense, but it ain't all that bad, I suppose. It's probably like 99% bad, but the 1% good is like, at least people ain't eating McDonald's. You know what I mean? But ultimately, I think the incentive here that is being produced, whether intentional or not, some may have their opinions on whether it is or isn't, is that no one's going to want to work these low-tier consumption jobs. There was one article, I think it was from Vice, I'm not sure. Or no, I think it was the Washington Post, where they said, they interviewed these young people who are like, I would rather live in a van than get a job at McDonald's. I'm already getting unemployment. I'd rather just save it and live in a van. Why would you take a $15 an hour job working full-time if you're getting $16 an hour to not work? You see how this works? You get more money not to work, but it's more than that. Imagine McDonald's says, okay, we'll give you $17 an hour. Then basically you're saying you'll give me $1 an hour to work full time. It's not worth it. 18, not worth it. You'd have to give someone like 40 or 50 bucks an hour to make it worth their while because they're getting money for nothing at this point. Everything was shut down so they can just sit around playing video games. They don't have anything to worry about. Perhaps that's something the climate change people are happy about, whether they say it or not. It means people are going out to fast food less. They're probably eating at home more. They're probably thinking, you know what? I don't have that much money, so I'm not going to waste it. They're spending less. They're living in vans. They're reducing their consumption. I think the reduction in consumption is a really good thing. I mean, think about it. Conservatives and rural people, for the most part, you live out in the middle of nowhere. Consumption is a lot lower. It's these city people that have been consuming in mass, wasting money and resources, doing very little work. And I got to be honest, they're all Democrats for the most part, living in these big cities in grandeur. Well, actually, I did that back. You know, living in cities that smell like sour milk and giant cubicles, but pretending that they live in grandeur, like in Capital City. Ultimately, I see what's happening, and I think the worst of it is really just slamming the cities. I don't know how much I should care. Because people need to be personally responsible for their own safety, for their own resources, and people out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the lockdowns haven't really affected them all that much. Many of the rural states have remained open because, well, I don't really have any neighbors. You know, I can walk outside. I'm not going to see a human being. You know what I mean? Now, this gas shortage is serious, though. It means an economy that's already being slammed with escalating lumber prices and steel prices, labor shortages at a time when there's mass openings and people on unemployment. It's already tough. Now you're going to add, now put it this way, you want to build a house. They're going to say, okay, well, lumber is up 250 to 600%. All right, well, let's buy it. I'm sorry, now transport's going to be up because this pipeline shut down. I think I see where this is going. This is going great reset territory, my friends. Again, whether intentional or not, I'm not making an assessment on that. But I'll tell you, where we end up, more people moving to the country, more people going out less. Hopefully people grow gardens more. I'm kind of okay with that. I mean, that's opening a window, right? Like, how many conservatives would love to just see these big city liberals have to learn how to chop wood and like actually grow their own food and be responsible for their own lives instead of consistently asking the government to do it for them? What we're learning now with these shutdowns, with the pandemic, with the escalation of prices, government can't do anything apparently. They're flipping and flopping and everything's falling apart. And in the end, if you relied on them, you're not going to be too happy about it. One of these days, the employment's going to stop coming, I guess. And then what do? You're going to rely on the government the entire time to take care of you? Eventually, people are going to say no, and you're going to be in a big city, and you're going to hate it. Like, I know people who are in New York, And a lot of people are saying it's like, it's whatever. Depends on who you ask, I suppose. A lot of people are saying the stores are closed. There's the crime is skyrocketing. It's not a fun situation now for people who are still in the big cities. For people in the country, for me, I haven't really noticed anything. So I was in the Philadelphia area, and then a few months in, because of the escalation of the riots, we were like, well, we were planning on, relocating at some point, setting up a new studio. Let's just go down there now in the big empty building and just get away from the cities. We don't want to be around. Everything was shut down. A lot of other people, like my neighbors, had left. We hadn't seen them for months. And then we went out to the country. And now, trees, mountains, clouds, beautiful. Go out to the range, no issues. You can go outside. There's no mask mandates out here. People in cities, man, it's probably been really, really bad. It's crazy to see these videos in New York where people are driving around. There's no traffic. I wonder, because people mentioned the Great Reset. The Great Reset said that COVID was an opportunity to reset the global economy towards like stakeholder or whatever. Certainly sounds like many Democrats are exploiting these situations. And this is the worrying thing, because a question I asked of Alex Jones, what if they're right? What if the planet is being eaten alive? What if we're like yeast farting ourselves to death? And, there needs to be some kind of reset. And Alex said, you're right. I've asked myself this question a million times. And the issue is, do you trust the global elites who buy beachfront property, or do you believe in individual liberties? And therein lies the big challenge. I would prefer if people weren't wasting food. I would prefer it if people weren't driving around wasting gas. I would prefer it if people replaced their lawns with gardens and grew at least some of their own food and had backyard chickens. But people don't want to do that. Now we have this great reset thing happening. I wonder if it's exploitation by the political ideologues who are like, sit back, let it crumble, because people got to be responsible for themselves. And I'm kind of like, well, they should be. But do we believe in individual liberties? And that's the interesting point in all of this. In the end, I don't think conservatives are going to be the ones who are hurting on this. I really, really don't. I think people out in the country are much better adapted. People in rural areas and even suburban areas, much better adapted to figuring things out on their own than people who live in these big cities, and many of them in the suburbs. People live in rural areas are probably like, whatever. I think it's funny, like I caught a groundhog the other day on accident. And, people were like, take him out back and get the 410. And I'm like, that's country life. But people who live out here understand what you got to do to take care of yourself, your family, and survive and protect the environment. People in cities don't. So who's really suffering from all of this? It's the city folk. It's the Democrats. Check this out. Look at this tweet. Here's this guy, Deontay Hitchcock, verified Twitter user. I'm not sure who he is, but he just said, I'm ready to vote again, showing his more than $4 a gallon gasoline. And he's like, yo, Biden, like, what is going on, man? Well, y'all voted for that. That's funny, right? It's funny, the conservatives who wanted Trump. Meanwhile, Trump was going to help the people in the cities. Now, sure, things are bad for a lot of people, but I'm pretty confident the conservatives are going to be fine. It's like, oh no, they're going to defund the police. I think conservatives defend the police department. I disagree with it at this point because we see what they're doing defending Antifa. But I think if you're a conservative, you might defend the cops. However, I'm also confident you're probably confident you'll make it with no cops, especially in rural areas. So who's really getting hit by all of this? Biden voters, man. It's what they voted for. All right. Well, I guess warning them was pointless. Telling people over and over again, don't do this. Now I got people who are Biden voters being like, yo, I'm in serious trouble. I need help. Can you hook me up? And I'm like, yeah. Well, you get what you pay for, I guess, or you get what you vote for. Anyway. Now, I hope everyone's all right. I hope the pipeline doesn't cause serious crisis for people. And no, I do think conservatives are going to be hit by gas prices. It'll be bad. But I got to say, if you put a conservative and a liberal in the middle of the woods, we both know who's going to make it and who's going to be begging for help. On average, I mean, I'm sure there's some liberals who understand. I shouldn't even say liberals, but like city dweller Democrats. I think even like, it's funny. You could even imagine the worst of the worst, like your stereotypical redneck Confederate flag wearing big fat, Southern Republican type guy. And he'd probably still know how to survive in the woods better than someone from the city. No joke. He'd probably be like, that's how you catch that there possum. Good eating. The worst, most stereotypical, Southern redneck. They're going to know how to get by. People in the city are going to be like, where's Subway? Where's Jimmy John's? Like, how do I eat? How do I start a fire? I wouldn't be surprised. But no, I hope everyone's okay from this. So stick around. Got more news coming up. Next video is at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.